This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. I love that Johnny Cash piece. I've got video of my nephew, who I think at the time was 1. He had never heard that song before. And we looked over, we put it on. So I Got Stripes by Johnny Cash. We put it on and he was standing there. He's like 1-year-old, barely could, I don't even know if he could walk. But he hears that song and he's just standing there and he starts bending his knees up and down to the beat. You know, just this kind of like squatting up and down to I Got Stripes. Which is clearly a song about going to jail. So I don't know what that says about my nephew. If my sister or brother-in-law are listening, you know, that's your guys' problem. You guys have to make sure your kids don't go to jail. Anyways, that's a tangent. We're not going there. I know my nephews are not going to go to jail, nor will my niece, I'm sure. Anyways, I put that piece in there actually for its simplicity. So I think it is kind of a fun analogy. Look, seriously, my nephew's not going to jail. I'm joking. I put it in there for simplicity's sake. Because it's a simple song, but it's powerful. It's big. It works. All of Johnny Cash's stuff was simple. And I'm going to kind of go in reverse. I'm going to end this podcast with something on simplicity. And before that, I'm going to go into something on predictions, but I'm going to start with something on risk. So it's going to be 3 here. Risk, predictions, simplicity. All kind of wrapped around trading, but maybe in an indirect way. So the first thing on risk, which I think is really interesting, is an article that appeared in Business Week. Japan's fear of risk is getting dangerous. And basically, for those that are not aware, the Japanese stock market is down 76% still from its 1989 high. That would have to be an entire generation, an entire country that clearly no longer believes in the stock market. Basically, people in Japan have very little tolerance for risk at all. They don't like risk. Risk is not their thing. And it's surely not in the stock market. And look, in many ways, if I'm thinking from a trend following perspective, it's dang good, unless they've been short, for them to not even be in the market. That's not the reason I bring up this piece, though, because it's the play it safe mentality. And I have a feeling this is where America is headed to, is the play it safe mentality. Anybody that follows my rantings and ravings, and if you think I'm a stark, raving, mad lunatic, well, that's fine. Perhaps I am. And I'm not offended. I'll still be your friend, perhaps. But you know I'm fond of Seth Godin. And Seth Godin is big about making something happen. Be bold. And speaking of being bold and speaking of being a Seth Godin fan, I recently bought his new book called either This Might Work or This Might Not Work. But he did this whole thing with Kickstarter to where you had to donate money before he even wrote the book, and then you get a copy of it. I saw that, but I didn't know what kind of book you were going to get or anything, so I didn't do the Kickstarter thing. But then I saw the book came out. It was this massive 19-pound book that dwarfed Tim Ferriss's new 4-Hour Chef, which is a really well-produced book as well. So I went on Amazon a couple of weeks after this book came out of Godin's in the last couple of weeks, and I finally found the thing on Amazon, and there was only one copy, and some guy was selling it. I don't know if he was even supposed to, but I paid $250 for it because I just wanted to see it. I wanted to see what one of my heroes about taking a risk had done with a book. Now, how many of you nut jobs out there would spend $250 for a book just to be inspired? Because that's why I did it. I spent $250 for a big 19-pound book just to be inspired. I probably won't read the whole thing. It basically is a very well-crafted version of all of Seth Godin's blog posts from 2006 to 2012. I probably read most of them. So I don't know if I'll read the book. I'll thumb through the book and it's the size of a coffee table. It's not a coffee table book. It is a coffee table. You could beat someone with it. I mean, you could walk down the street and just, they talk about banning guns. I should ban this book from beating. You could beat people to death with this book. It's huge. But anyways, I did it for many reasons, but primarily to be inspired. And it's not the kind of book that would go over well in Japan, getting back to the article. And I want to read an excerpt also here that it talks about there's this tendency in Japan to focus on downsides more than opportunities. Now, that actually might sound very trend following-esque, because trend followers want to focus on cutting your losses and let the upside take care of themselves. Slightly different thing going on in Japan, though. They're literally just saying, we don't even care about the opportunity anymore. It's just about protect our principal time. And for example, this attitude of risk aversion in Japan explains why, for example, regulators held up vaccines approved decades early in other countries, why few Japanese students choose to study abroad, and why 844 trillion yen, almost twice the country's yearly economic output, sits idle in cash at home and in savings accounts, earning 0.02% interest. It's not earning interest is the point. And like I said, I think this is an attitude that we will see in America. It's an opportunity for you. Because if you believe that there is this kind of malaise lurking out there, if you believe your neighbor is starting to get more and more scared and everyone's just looking to the state for assistance, the state for help, if that's what's going on, it's an opportunity for you. Look, here's another example, Japan and America. So a baseball example. They don't swing for the fences in Japan. They bunt twice as much as American baseball. Bunt twice as much. That's risk aversion right there. And actually, another interesting thing is that swinging for the fences, as long as it's in the context of a mathematical expectation, where the magnitude of your winners and losers are thought through, swinging for the fences by itself is not overly risky. So in many ways, we've got a numbers problem, a statistical thinking problem going on in Japan. So now if you're Japanese, hold on. I have to tell you, I cut an interesting deal to have my products recently translated into Japanese. So I'm going to Tokyo. I love Tokyo. I can't wait to get there. I'm going to try and go have sushi with Jiro. So by any stretch of the imagination, do not think I'm offering some kind of blanket criticism. We're trying to position America at some high point, because I actually think America is on the exact same path. Absolutely the same path. And perhaps the whole world is. Perhaps the Japanese people just got there first. I don't necessarily think that the rest of the world has got it all figured out by any stretch. It's just a useful example of risk. And it goes on to also say, this article, it goes on to talk about that the fear of being pushed out of the group is frightening, because you don't get back in. And I want to kind of finish with this article. One guy at the end, he says, I'm worried my money will run out before I die. The guy's a former Tokyo Gas employee who has seen his assets shrink after putting most of his retirement package into a bank account 12 years ago. I'm frustrated with getting zero interest on my savings, but I was too scared to risk losing the principal. End quote. Like I said, I'm not picking on Japan. I cannot wait to get to Tokyo. I love the Japanese people. They're the nicest people. So respectful. City is cleaner than a whistle. But this risk aversion, there's a lesson in it for all of us. You can't be a trend following trader if you're risk averse. If you say to yourself, and I did a monologue the other day where we talked about 3.5%. This article talked about 3.5% as a plunge. If you think 3.5% is a plunge, because it was referring to David Harding's drop in performance in 2012, if you think 3.5% down is a plunge, you've got risk aversion issues. Continuing to my second kind of segment for this podcast, which is from another article. 3 articles today that I just wanted to comment on. I think all of them are really interesting and useful. These are I think they were all sent to me by people. But this one was from Golf Digest. What predictions say about us? And predictions say that we can pretend to know. For a prideful moment, we can pretend to know. right? Pretend to know what? Well, the article talks about how golf is the one sport that there's really no handicapping. So there's 150 guys or so on the pro golf circuit. You really don't know who's going to win. I think Tiger Woods, for a while there, maybe won 25%. But there's no predictability. There's no predictability in anything anyways, but a lot of people like to think they can predict sports betting. But the reason I found this interesting was the specific piece of writing that I'm going to read here real quick. So it's the very end of the article, and it says, most compellingly, human beings are wired to predict. In ancient times, predictions served as psychological counterweight to the extreme uncertainty of life. As we've gained more control over this daily existence, predictions help encourage the illusion that we are in charge of our own destiny. The more that is unknown, the greater the urge to predict. And the recently departed futurist Arthur Ray Bradbury once said, quote, mysteries abound where most we seek for answers. End quote. Where there are more mysteries and unanswered questions than in golf, by predicting who will win a tournament, we golfers are fighting back at a game that confounds us and robs us of control. For a prideful moment, we can pretend to know. Predicting is not that different than finding temporary solace in the latest swing theory or newest equipment. Well, okay, this is great if it's just fantasy. And this is my point. This is why I wanted to use this article as a teaching moment to talk about it. If it's just fantasy, it's not fantasy. Literally, on just about every subject under the sun, even though the historical evidence doesn't back it, somehow or another, modern man has come to believe that we can predict almost anything, including the weather. Maybe they've got that one figured out closely, but I don't think so. But I get it's hardwired into us. We have to predict. So the first article was about being risk averse and not looking at the opportunities that are presented to you. If you can understand that so many people are hardwired, we all are hardwired, but if so many people are destined to predict and predict wrong, and to continually do it over and over and over, almost like some cartoon where, Wile E. Coyote runs into the wall nonstop 1,000,000 times and just keeps doing it, and everyone laughs that he keeps doing it, and everyone laughs that he keeps doing it, and he just keeps doing it, and we all laugh. At some point in time, isn't it funny that all these smart people just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again when it comes to trying to make money in the markets, trying to predict what's going to happen? It's January 2013. I haven't read much in the local press, or any press for that matter. But it's that kind of month where everyone starts to make major predictions about what's going to happen. And everyone likes to listen. I don't know if people take notes and wait to the end of the year to see if the predictions are, oh, yes, I do know. No one does that. So if this is the psychological framework upon which current modern man rests, what a wonderful opportunity for you to make money, for you to profit, if you've got a strategy that's predicated on not predicting. And I'm not going to even drop a plug for trend following there as one of those strategies that has nothing to do with predicting. So my third article that I want to talk about is about simplicity. And this was why I led with the Johnny Cash piece at the beginning. So it's called One Trick Pony, and it's about Peyton Manning and Tom Moore. Tom Moore was the offensive coordinator. He's in his 70s now with the Indianapolis Colts, where Peyton Manning played most of his NFL football until this year, where he's now with the Denver Broncos. And I was just watching that game, and at this moment, hold on, let's see. I have to go see because I was watching the game. I don't know. Let's see if, well, you know what? They didn't win. That's right. Well, hold on. It was going to overtime, I think. Let me see. Yep. Shoot. Baltimore won. Ha. Denver blew that. Anyways, But even though Denver blew it, Denver had a great year this year. And the reason they had a great year is that Peyton Manning and Tom Moore had teamed up with a strategy that they had used for great success for over a decade in Baltimore. And this article at Grantland called One Trick Pony talks about it. And I want to make a few points here from the article. The enduring wonder of the Manning-Moore offense was not only its incredible success, but the way that success came about, by running the fewest play concepts of any offense in the league. Despite having one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time under center, the Colts eschewed the conventional wisdom of continually adding volume to their offense in the form of countless formations and shifts. Another former player said, I can give you the playbook. He said, it's not about what they're going to run. Everyone knows what they're going to run. It's about execution, and they execute. So the article continues. The small number of plays essentially puts the full offense at Manning's disposal at any time. And by combining few formations with few plays, both veterans and newcomers to the offense had their acclimation eased by the small number of tasks. Let me continue here. Just want to make the point. There's one little paragraph I want to read here at the end. It says, none of this is groundbreaking, but that's the point. No matter how many hours you study your opponent's films, there's only going to be 11 players on the other side of the line of the scrimmage. It's a simple game in which strategic beauty comes not from being surprised by some new clever trick, but from the sublime routine brilliance of a master in his element. Now that is trend following. It is relatively simple. It is robust. It's big. There's not a lot of moving parts. There's not a lot of little tricks to it. It is what it is. Robust, big. It is beautiful. It is elegant. It is simple. That doesn't mean it's easy for someone that doesn't understand to execute it, but you can write it down. And I heard Keith Campbell say this, or it was somebody working for Keith Campbell years ago famously say that they could write down their entire trading strategy on the back of an envelope or a napkin, something to that effect. But the execution of trend following is the brilliance, the sticking with it. And so even though Peyton Manning lost a heartbreaker today, and I saw that last touchdown before it looked like they went to overtime. That last touchdown, somebody completely blew that in the secondary. That's actually probably. I watched one NFL game this year, so don't think I'm sitting here trying to be some huge NFL guy. But that's the issue. Sublime, brilliant execution. Know what's coming. Anyone with a pulse knows exactly what David Hardig is doing. Anybody with a pulse knows what Bill Dunn is doing. They know what Aspect Capital is doing. They know what TransTrend is doing. They know what William Eckhart is doing. It's not tough to figure out. There's some hints in my books. But what they do that's magnificent, and what they do that's Hall of Fame-esque, what they do that can be looked up to, is their consistency. They stick with it. They persevere. They make it happen. They wake up each day. So whether you have an interest in trend following or being an entrepreneur or whatever, consistency. So I think all three of those articles are worth checking out. And so the one at Grantland that I just was talking about was called One Trick Pony. The other one was called, let's see. At Golf Digest is What Predictions Say About Us at Golf Digest. And then the one at Business Week was called Japan's Fear of Risk is Getting Dangerous. They're all worth listening to for sure. I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com, I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.